Welcome to SuperCoach, and today we're going to preview the ruck department and a couple of ways that we can approach that line in 2017. Now, of course, there's basically two ways that we look at our rucks, and that's either going your set and forget option with two premiums from the get-go and just sticking with those throughout the season and not having to worry about the ruck department as regards to trades unless they get injured, or the other option is, of course, going with a mid-price option and a stepping stone towards your second premium and coupling a mid-pricer alongside, whoever thinks going to be the top ruckman for this season. Now, of course, this year I think there's a few options and a few decent cases for both of those ways that we could approach the ruck department. At first, I'll have a look at the mid-price option, I think, because there's a couple of guys that are definitely putting their hand up, in particular one, and that's obviously Paddy Ryder seems to be one that is quite popular among a lot of coaches. You can get him for around the 4.18 mark, I believe. Not a bad price, but I'm a little hesitant, I must say. Now, of course, he has his dual position status. Forward ruck, has shown good numbers in the past, but I'm not fully sold on Ryder. I think while he's at a nice price, obviously missing last year, it's not an absolute bargain price. And I know when I previewed Port Adelaide, a few people didn't absolutely agree with what I had to say on Ryder, and fair enough, it's an opinion game, but I don't honestly see him being a keeper in either the ruck department or the forward department as far as I'm concerned. I don't think he's going to be a top 6 forward. Don't really think he'd be a top 8 forward, maybe not even top 10. I just think there's a little bit of unknown about Ryder, such as his role at Port Adelaide. His last season wasn't great. I think he only averaged about 85. Of course, when we look through his numbers, he's had some great numbers at the Bombers, of course, but since then, didn't quite fit into Port Adelaide very well, didn't tie in with Lobie very well. Now he's missed 12 months of footy. I just have my concerns. If he was about 300k, it'll be hard to say no, but he's still 420. He's not an absolute bargain basement price. So for me, I'm probably not going to go with him, but he seems to be the leading candidate in regards to mid-price options going alongside probably your Gawn or your Goldstein. A couple of other guys that you could look towards, of course, Aaron Sandilands, you can get for around the 308,000 mark. And of course, that's a bargain for Sandy, but I couldn't see many people going with him. Just the age he's at, I think he's pushing well into the mid-30s these days. His body's always been a worry. I don't think we have to be super concerned about his scoring, but the fact that when we're picking ruckman, you've got 3 guys to pick with. You may not even have a playing ruck as your ruck 3, so to go with someone who's in the twilight of their career and a potential chance to get injured at any moment, I think it's probably too risky. Other than that, you might look towards a Tom Boyd. You can check out what I think on him on my Dogs preview, but, not the worst option in the world. I'd probably be saying that's a little too risky, and I think you're probably going to steer clear of him. I think you'll probably have a breakout season, average close to 90, but I don't think it'll be enough to really convince anyone to get on board him, considering the potential risk of him not doing that and how damaging it would be to our sides. So they're probably your mid-price options, the main ones. I mean, some people might look towards your Giles or a few left field picks as well, but I think, for me personally, in the past, I've often gone with a sole ruckman and a mid-pricer, mainly because I have been unsure on who the clear top 2 rucks are going to be. So the thinking is that you pick one that you're pretty confident on, get a few scores from your mid-pricer, watch him go up in price, and then land perhaps a fallen premium or upgrade to someone who's clearly made it into the top 2 or 3 rucks that you can bank on. But this season, I think a lot of people will go with your set and forget option, and rightly so. I think the clear top 2 rucks are obvious. They're Gawn and Goldstein. A lot of people are going to run with that, and understandably so. I'm probably not going to go with Gawn. In a couple of days' time, I'll do a video on why I'm not going to roll with Gawn and Dangerfield. Of course, many people, when picking their sides, will simply lock them in with confidence. And I'm not saying they're bad picks, but I'll go into more detail in that video. But I guess for the ruck department, I just feel Gawn is so expensive for a bloke who's had one fantastic season, and it was fantastic. It was unbelievable. A hit-out monster. He's a monster of a man, can go forward. He does the lot, as his numbers suggest, but I think to pay nearly a $650,000, and the fact that his body has let him down, the fact that he is so expensive and we can go 70k cheaper and find someone like Goldstein. Again, I'm not picking your side, these are just my opinions, and I think, you know, obviously in the other lines it's more discussion around structure, but we can really pinpoint a few names in the ruck department because there is less options and there's less positions to fill. So I think that ruck one's definitely between Gawn and Goldstein, quite obviously, and a lot of people will roll with both. Now, a lot of guys will also be looking at Brodie Grundy. He seems quite popular, and very popular seems to be the Goldstein and Grundy combination, even your Gawn and Grundy. There's a lot of G's in there, nearly lost me words. But I think Grundy's not a bad option. I mean, I can't argue with that. He's a bloke coming into the prime of his career, peak of his powers, had a great back end of last year. His numbers are very good when you're looking at potential breakout candidates. Now, of course, he averaged 95, so it's more of another breakout into the elite. Of course, he's well and truly shown that he's capable of doing great numbers. Will he break into that elite bracket? That'll be the question. A lot of people think so, and I personally won't be going with him at this stage. If you saw my first SuperCoach side of 2017 that I uploaded about a week ago, I did have Stefan Martin. Now, of course, there's not too much separating them. There's about 30 grand, and I think Martin will probably be a little more of a point of difference for mine, and he does have the runs on the board. If he puts together a good pre-season, is clearly the Lions' #1 ruck, that'll probably be enough to convince me, but I can certainly understand why people would go with Grundy, because he does have great numbers, his graph's going in the right direction, he's young, he's got that #1 ruck mantle, he's mobile, he does it all, tackles hard, he's a very good option. So I probably couldn't argue too hard against that one. I could definitely see him pushing the 3 figures. I guess the question you might raise is Gawn and Goldstein probably going to be the top 2 rucks come season's end. Looks pretty clear. You can't always guess these things with full confidence, but it looks pretty clear that they will be, barring something crazy or an injury. So I guess the thought process that we might think about is, well, if we go a Grundy or a Martin, and thinking that the top 2 spots are already locked away, is that a smart move? Because I guess when we're picking our teams, ideally, when we pick a premium, we believe that they're going to be in the top bracket of their particular line. So I guess when you're picking your 2 ruck spots, you're ideally picking the #1 and #2 ranked player in the ruck come season's end. Now at this stage it looks as if that would be Gawn and Goldstein, so I can exactly see why people would simply be biting the bullet. I'm going set forget. Yes, Gawn's a little expensive, but I'm going to want him at some stage. Why not get him now? I do understand that philosophy in theory. I suppose it's just a bit of a question over whether Martin or Grundy can really break back into that 110 for Martin. Can Grundy get there for the first time will probably be the question, because I suppose logically it doesn't really make sense picking a guy that will be a keeper but we probably feel he won't be a top 2 ruck. That probably doesn't add up. But again, it's that constant battle between where can I save cash, how can I better use that cash in other lines, will this guy drop, will this guy appreciate in price? It's all relative. So I think probably it's definitely the 4 fellas, your likes of Martin, Grundy, Goldstein and Gawn, that will cause the most discussion for our starting lineups. A few people don't mind Sam Jacobs as well. Of course, he's quite cheap at about $470. He's shown that he can go pretty big, upward of that 110 mark in the past. I don't have as much confidence in him as others, but you know, some people might be looking towards him, and I have seen his name thrown about a couple of times as well. As for that ruck 3, that probably wraps it up for your on-field ruck. Remember that 3rd ruck position, of course it makes it quite difficult. Back in the day where we had 2 on-field, 2 on the bench, you could quite easily just go, you know, maybe take a risk with a ruck 3 that you think will play, maybe one who's even, you know, around 150, 160, but you think you play as backup, and then your ruck 4 is quite simply your vice captain loophole and a guy that you can swap around with a bit of dual position. Now, Of course, just having the one ruck option in regards to emergency does make that a little trickier, and there aren't any that are really standing out at the moment, and there rarely is at this stage, particularly rucks, because they are, there's less positions on the ground for them, generally one, sometimes two, depending on the club. So it does make it more difficult to pinpoint rookie price players that are going to be good options for us. But at this stage, there's been a bit of talk about the Swans' Darcy Cameron. Other than that, it's very hard for me to sit here and tell you anything with full confidence, because these blokes' future in 2017 will simply be decided by how they're training at the moment, and particularly how their pre-season form goes in the practice matches. It'll be largely down to that. It could be down to an injury that happens, and all of a sudden one of these fellas gets a call-up. And I think if none of them get a call-up, there's no point going a speculative pick that you think Cameron might get a game at some stage. I'd rather just go with, your bargain basement, save your extra 15 or 20,000, and just go with a 102,000 fella who's a ruck forward. And at this stage, it looks like Fremantle's Luke Strandicker, if I said that correctly. Obviously not a household name, but if the cards play out the way they could and not have many rookie priced options for our ruck, he could quite quickly be a very popular player for no other reason than the fact that he has a ruck and forward option as his player status. So very interesting that. Of course, if you're not familiar, that allows you to perhaps combine your swapping of Ryder and him and other players in your forward line if they're a ruckman as well. It gives you that flexibility that I suppose if Goldstein does get a bit sore, he's missing 1 week with a knee, well then all of a sudden you can swap Ryder into the ruck or something like that, and you can just place him on the forward line bench, and you can work around it. It gives you a bit more flexibility now that we only have that one ruckman as emergency. So I do understand that line of thinking with Ryder if you're thinking insurance purposes, but for me, I'm probably going to steer clear of that and just keep it a bit more simple and go with your starting forwards, your starting rucks, and if someone got injured in my ruck department, I just have to ride the bumps and assess it at that time. Maybe trade them if it's 1 week. You just see what you can do. I'm always cautious of looking at the what ifs. What if this guy does get injured? I think as far as it goes for picking your initial squad, I pretty much look to pick the best available squad, stuff your buys, stuff your dual position status, because that's all hearsay. It's all guesswork. He might get injured. I might need dual position status here. I might need to swap these guys. He might be in my team by round 12 when there's a bye. There's a lot of mights, there's a lot of ifs. I'm sort of getting onto a different tangent here, but the simple thing is I try and pick my best side and not really sacrifice points for insurance, basically. But nonetheless, I've got off topic there. We'll get back to the rucks, and to be honest, I think that's about it, really. I mean, I've covered off on your mid-price options, your premium rucks. When you're picking your on-field guys, you're either going your set and forget, or your number one ruck and maybe a mid-price guy who can either be a stepping stone or give you a bit of flexibility, i.e. Ryder, and of course wait and see in about a month or so in regards to whether there's any rookie price rucks, because they'll tell a story in the near future for sure. But thanks for listening, guys. We'll check out the forward line very soon. I think I'll have a look into the draft as well, SuperCoach draft that is, maybe do a bit of a video on that, a bit of a video on Dangerfield and Gawn, a few other things, and we'll do some more exact player profiles as well down the track in the lead up to probably the season. They'll probably, once they get rolling in regards to who's the more popular players, and when they come to light, I'll preview a few of those. So I'd also check out the SuperCoach Championship ring. I did a video on that if you're interested. You can check that out as well, and of course check out all my other videos. Leave a comment as always, and above all, subscribe to the channel. We've got about 30 odd in the last week or so, I think, which is fantastic. I'm absolutely pumped about that, and I've been quite surprised how quickly it's going up once, sort of February's come around and SuperCoach is starting to get into it once it was released. So good to see. Thanks again, guys. If you're a new subscriber, thanks for being on board, and I'll catch you guys soon.